Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our very first ever Eastern Canadian virtual women's event. I am so excited that all of you have decided on this amazing Sunday morning to join us. My name is Melanie Singh, and I am one of the coordinators of this event. And my husband and I live here in the nation's capital of Canada in Ottawa. I'm not sure what brought you here today. Maybe you thought, I'm here to hear my friend Elizabeth speaking, or I want to hear my friend Ocean singing, or I just saw you online and thought, hey, I want to join a women's event for International Women's Day. Whatever your reason, let me tell you one really important thing before we get started. And here's what I'd like you to know. According to Hebrews 12, verse 22 to 23, this is why you're here. You have not merely come to a women's event. You have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God. Wow. So just in case you weren't aware why you were here today, you are literally joining a chorus of heavenly hosts in worship of our heavenly God. Before we get into the programming and the housekeeping items, I wanted to take an opportunity just to thank a few women who really we partnered with here in Ottawa to make this event a very special event. And I want to just highlight some of the women here on the screen. Manuela, who serves as a representative in the Montreal Church. Jillian, who serves as a representative in Hamilton. Connie Teowen, who serves as a representative from the Newmarket Church. And then in the next screen, Nancy from Halifax, and Grace from Quebec City, and of course, myself. For the next couple minutes, if you have your tea or your coffee, you can take it out and take a couple sips, because we're going to go through not only the programming, but we're going to go through just a few housekeeping tips for those of us who are unfamiliar with Zoom and maybe just need a little bit of reminders. So for the programming, just a couple highlights here. We have two phenomenal guest speakers, Clarissa Herka and Elizabeth McCrossan. We'll have the first guest speaker in the beginning of our program and the second in the last half of our program. Now, during their messages, I would ask you to type some questions that may arise as they're speaking in the chat box, because after the last speaker, we are going to have a question and answer period, and Jillian will be moderating that time. And so if something hits you and you'd like to ask our guest speakers, please go ahead and put that in the chat, and our guest speakers will be happy to answer that for you. We probably won't have time to get to every question, but we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. We will have an opportunity to hear from one of our nonprofit partners, which, for us, we're really excited always for women's events to be able to partner with a nonprofit. And this year we're partnering with Dress for Success. I won't say too much about them because we will have a representative here today from Dress for Success to share a little bit about that nonprofit and how we as participants can really help them. Let's transition to some of our housekeeping items. I want to go through a few things as far as Zoom etiquette goes. And one of them, I hear someone's camera. One of them is to mute yourself if you're unmute, if right now you are not muted. That was my first thing. The second thing is if you do have a question or a concern or you're not hearing properly, please put it in the chat box at the bottom of your screen if you're on a laptop or desktop, and someone will assist you. We have people who are monitoring that and they will assist you. If you want to clap or cheer or react to anything that the speaker's saying, the very bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a reactions button. You can click on that and it gives you some options to clap your hands or say yay, or all of that kind of wonderful stuff. If you're joining on mobile phone, the accents are a little different, but if you press the three dots, you'll find your way, navigate your way through all of that. We are offering French translation today. We have two wonderful sisters who will be translating English into French for all of those. At the bottom of your screen, again, you'll see a button that says interpretation. If you click that button, it'll give you the option to hear what we're talking about today in French, and then you'll be put into a room where you can hear everything that's happening today. One note about our translation, we will have breakout rooms, and we'll give you instructions when we get to that part in the program. But in those breakout rooms, we will not have the option of interpretation. So that will not be an option for you. I'm so sorry. Zoom has its limits. But when you come back into the General Assembly, you will be given the interpretation again. I think I already spoke to you about putting in your questions during the breakout period. But one thing I wanted to say, everyone has the option, you know, in your view and what you see, to have a gallery view or a speaker view. And if you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see view. We would love for you to put that into speaker view. And the reason we want you to do that is because most of our program is going to be in presentation mode. If you want to see who's speaking and not just see a list of a bunch of people, then you'll need to be put in that speaker view so that the speaker's face is the face that you see. Most importantly, if you didn't hear anything else I said, please hear this. Enjoy yourself. We are in for a great treat with our guest speakers, with several sisters who have lent their beautiful voices to sing a song for us. Please enjoy yourself. Before we move on any further, I am going to go to our mighty and awesome Father in prayer. Join with me in prayer, please. Holy King, mighty Father, Lord and Creator of the universe, we, your daughters, bow before you simply because that is all that we can do before the Creator of the universe, God. We humbly come before you because with everything that we do, with everything that is presented today, with every ear and every heart that hears the message, our desire is glorification of your name. Our desire is to move every heart closer to you, God. We know that we are weak. We know that we are limited. We know that we are imperfect. And yet even in our imperfections, God, you use us. You make us shine brightly. And we are incredibly grateful for that. Give us hearts of peace. Give us hearts of joy. Give us hearts of patience as we go through today. But most of all, God, give us hearts of humility as we listen, as we engage, as we participate. Help us, Father, to remember always we do what we do in service to you and to glorify your name. I ask for a very special blessing for Clarissa and for Elizabeth, God, as they share their hearts, as they share from your word, as they share from an amazing woman in the Bible, Esther, as they bring her life to light. Help us, God, to see ourselves, to see the plan and the journey that you have for us. Help us to see acutely how you have allowed, no matter where we are in our life, for this to be our time. Because you desire, Father, for every minute of our life on this earth to be a time that we can give ourselves to you and give ourselves to others. We love you, and we offer up this prayer in the name of Jesus and to your glory. Amen. Enjoy yourselves, everybody.
Thanks, Melanie. Welcome, everyone. During registration, you put the name of your city or the name of your province or state or country. And so we took all those names and we created a collage with all the different places. And so these are all the different places that we're coming from. We're literally coming from all around the world today. So we have people from, the Philippines and from Jamaica, Costa Rica, the United Kingdom. We're from all over the states: Tennessee, Kansas, Texas, New York, even someone's coming here from Kenya. We have people from the East Coast and West Coast of Canada, starting from Nova Scotia all the way to Vancouver. And so the bigger words are where most of the people here are from today. But it's just amazing that we have people loving God from all over the world today. So thank you for joining us. Throughout this event, we're going to be having not one, not two, but actually 3 door prizes today. So if you are one of the winners, we're going to be emailing a gift card to you, so an Amazon gift card. So we're going to start off with our first door prize right now. So drum roll. All right, and I'm going into the Excel sheet to pull out a name. I created a spreadsheet with all the registrations, and I'm just going to pull a name from a generator. And our first winner is Connie Heckber from Cayuga, Ontario. So congratulations, Connie. We will be emailing that gift card to you. Congratulations. So right now, we're going to be having a performance from 2 beautiful young ladies named Oceane and Megan.
You can be amazing, you can turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug. You can be an outcast or be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. Or you can start speaking up. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way the words do when they settle beneath your skin. Kept on the inside and no sunlight, sometimes a shadow waits. But I wonder what would happen if you say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave. 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 Everybody's been there, everybody's been stared down by the enemy, falling for the fear and hunting, disappearing, bow down to the mighty. But don't run, stop holding your tongue. Maybe there's a way out of the cage where you live. Maybe one of these days you can let the light in. Show me how big your brave is. Say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave. And since your history of silence won't do you any good, did you think you would? Let your words be anything but empty. Why don't you tell them the truth? Say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave with what you want to honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave.
Oh my goodness. I don't know about you guys, but that moved my heart. What beautiful, beautiful voices you have, ladies. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. And I really do love the message of that song. I at this moment have the privilege of introducing our first guest speaker, Clarissa Herka. I've known Clarissa for over 20 years. I've actually known her husband, Kevin, for even longer. And I had the privilege of knowing Clarissa from the very early days of her journey with Christ. And so I've also had the privilege to see her grow and become an amazing, powerful, humble, joyful woman of conviction. From the very first time I met Clarissa, she was a passionate woman of conviction. Clarissa is not only a mom and a wife, but as a graduate from McGill University in political science and women's studies, Clarissa has always had a passion. She's always been a passionate advocate for empowering women. And if you have been around her or have been able to serve with her in her ministry career, Clarissa always demonstrates that heart in her women's ministry. She has served in the ministry in Canada and in United States, throughout the United States, and has spent many of her years serving in the youth and family ministry, really strengthening the youth ministry. One of the things I would say about Clarissa as well is Clarissa is somebody that perseveres. And as she speaks today, you're going to hear that. You're going to hear a woman who not only has persevered through difficulty, but has found a way to find God. Clarissa, I feel honored not only to be sitting at your feet and to be inspired by you this morning, but I feel honored, more importantly, to call you my friend. I love you. I'm so grateful that you desire to take time out of your busy schedule to come and serve us this morning. Clarissa Herka, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. It's so encouraging to be with you. Thank you so much, Melanie, for that wonderful intro. I'm so happy to be able to share this time with all of you. And I'm so grateful for Zoom, for technology that allows us to come together from really all over the continent and all over the world. I'm so grateful. So I'm just gonna start off with a little bit of French, but please be gracious with me because I don't get to speak French as much as I'd like to these days. Bonjour tout le monde, je suis ravie de célébrer la Journée internationale de la femme avec vous tous. Je m'appelle Clarissa, je suis mariée depuis près de 18 ans à mon incroyable mari Kevin et j'ai 2 adolescents, Gabrielle qui a 5 ans et Carson qui a 13 ans. Nous vivons à Kansas City, aux États-Unis, mais je serai toujours canadien dans l'âme. Je suis née et j'ai grandi dans la grande ville de Toronto et j'ai étudié dans la belle ville de Montréal, à l'Université McGill. Être avec vous ce matin, c'est comme être de retour à la maison. I am so encouraged to be with all of you today to celebrate International Women's Day. On the screen here is a picture of my family, and I chose this picture because it represents a very special moment for our family. This is the day that our daughter Gabrielle got baptized almost a year ago during the quarantine. I've been married to my amazing husband, Kevin, for almost 18 years, and we've been blessed with 2 amazing kids, Gabrielle, who's 15, and Carson, who's 13. We currently live in Kansas City, but I was born and raised in Toronto and attended McGill University in the amazing city of Montreal. So really, I am Canadian at heart. And being with all of you today, it feels like being home. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be able to share with you some thoughts today around our amazing, inspiring theme of This Is My Time. And I just want to say I'm so excited and encouraged just seeing so many different women playing a part even in today. Thank you so much, Megan and Ocean, for that beautiful song. I had to actually take my tissue out because I was tearing up because I was so moved just by the words and your beautiful voices. So I just wanted to also say, can we just thank the planning committee? Can we just show them some love in the chat? Because they have worked so hard behind the scenes to put this together. And I just want to acknowledge them. Thank you so much for the invite to speak this morning. Ladies, this already is just such a special time, and I'm so, so grateful. Before I get started, yes, thank you, planning committee. You guys are amazing. Before I get started, I also wanted to acknowledge that there are so many women on here today who mean so much to me. So many women that I deeply love and respect who've helped me to become the woman that I am today. I won't be able to name all of you, but I do want to acknowledge women like Garmin Kwong and Melanie Singh, who shared the scriptures with me when I was a young woman, and they helped me to see that God had an amazing plan for my life. Thank you. As Melanie shared, I'm so grateful for our connection over the years and just all that I've been able to learn from her example. I'm so grateful for women like Sinead Tour, Patty Petter, Connie Tewin, Brenda Frost, Barb Locke, and so many others who've shared so much wisdom with me over the years. And I also want to acknowledge the amazing work of the women who serve with the women's ministries all throughout Eastern Canada. I'm deeply grateful for each of you, whether paid or unpaid. Thank you so much for your labor of love. You are having an eternal impact on so many women's lives. And I also want to give a shout out to my amazing mother-in-law, Jeanette, who is part of the awesome Hamilton Church, and for my own mom, Belita, who is also with us this morning. Hi, Mom. And actually, I don't know, my dad might be watching too. I'm not sure if guys are allowed on here, but thank you, Mom, for raising Ro and I to be such strong women and for your amazing example all throughout our lives. So a little bit more about me. So I am Filipino. My parents came to Canada from the Philippines in the 1970s, and my sister and I were both born here, but we're definitely Filipino through and through. So I don't know if there's any other Filipinos out there, but I'm giving you a little shout out. So I just wanted to share three of my favorite things about being Filipino. So the first one is the food. If you've ever been able to have a chance to try Filipino food, then you'll know some of our favorites like pancit, like those noodles, and then those little lumpia, those Filipino spring rolls, which are just so yummy and honestly so addictive. I could eat like 100 of them. And of course, we love our karaoke. My family growing up, we had like a stationary karaoke, and then we also had one that we could like bring with us, like if we went to someone else's house. So we're definitely committed to the karaoke thing. And then like all Filipinos, I love to dance. So I could be at the grocery store, worshiping at church, and I'll just find myself moving, and I don't even notice it sometimes, but I feel like it's just like in the Filipino blood. As I mentioned, I'm also a mom to two teenagers, and so I'm kind of coming face to face the reality that I'm no longer cool. Like, I mean, I try, I really do, but my kids will often tell me when something I say is not cool. So for example, I'll be like, oh, wow, that guy's really got some swag. And they'll be like, Mom, so that word is actually not cool anymore. Like nobody says that anymore. But I guess I always knew that this day would come. And then I've also noticed, anyone out there in your 40s? Okay, so I hit the 40s and I started to get these like aches and pains that like I never had before. Like I would just like sit in a certain position and then get up, like crossing my legs and then get up. And then it's like, there's these weird like aches and pains. And I'm like, when did that happen? Like that never used to happen, but I guess it's all just part of the joys of aging. But there's no doubt that we all find ourselves in a crazy time. Did you ever think that you would live through a worldwide pandemic? I know it's been challenging for all of us in so many ways, but one of the things that is kind of cool is that we all now have a shared experience because it's something that we've all been through together. I wanted to start off just sharing with you a little bit about my life and what this season has been like for me, some of the things me and my family have had to navigate, just to kind of give you a picture of where we've been, but then also for those of you who don't know me, to get a chance to know me a little bit better. So one of the most challenging things during this season has been experiencing deep loss and grief. 3 years ago, sadly, we lost my brother-in-law, Ryan. This was Kevin's youngest brother, and he was only 23 years old. So it definitely felt like his life was cut short, and that was a very low point for our family and something that we're still processing years later. And then we moved away from home and went through a ministry transition. And during that time, I also experienced some hurt and even some breakdown in some longstanding spiritual relationships, which was challenging and brought a lot of pain. And it's something that we don't always talk about, but we can experience hurt even within our relationships in the church. And then moving away from home meant uprooting our kids, which was difficult. And when they had moments where they were struggling to adjust to that big move, I could find myself blaming myself and even questioning if it was the right decision to move away. Honestly, during this dark season, I also started to experience depression and anxiety. I remember feeling physical anxiety, like a literal weight on my chest, and not wanting to get out of bed because I didn't feel like I could face the world. I also began to experience anxiety attacks for the first time in my life. And for anyone who's experienced those before, you know that it's a very humbling feeling when you feel that out of control of your body. Probably because of these and all the other stresses, the emotional pain and distress continued to manifest itself in my body in other physical ways. Just this past fall, I experienced an intense menstrual bleeding episode where I bled heavily for 21 days and I became severely anemic. I ended up being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, and I ended up needing 2 blood transfusions because of how low my hemoglobin levels got. And I can honestly share with you that with that anemia and ongoing blood loss, I have never felt so weak in my entire life. It's like I felt like I was like kind of slowly fading away, and it was a very scary thing to go through. In addition to my own struggles, 2 of our siblings were also diagnosed with cancer this past year. I'm so thankful to God that Kevin's brother is doing a lot better, but my sister is currently in the middle of chemo treatments. I'm so proud of my sister and her courage, but she's definitely still in the middle of her battle. And her name is Rowena. If you want to say a prayer for her, our family would definitely appreciate it. So in the midst of all of this, you add in a worldwide pandemic, racial tensions and civil unrest, many political divisions, especially here in the US, and it's fair to say that it's not been an easy time. And I'm sure that in a group this size, many of us have had our fair share of struggles and challenges. So I want to ask us to throw in the chat, what's something that's been challenging for you lately? Maybe it was something in 2020, maybe it's something you're going through currently. If you feel comfortable, please go ahead and share in the chat. So someone mentioned health. That's definitely for sure a big one, especially for us as women and even as we're aging. Marriage challenges, financial challenges, isolation, postpartum struggles, loss, death, spiritual challenges. I mean, thank you all so much for just being real, because I think as we're going through the chat and just seeing, it can remind us that we're not alone, that we each are going through our own struggles and our own challenges. And it's difficult. Like, life is definitely challenging. Perhaps some of us are struggling with health or chronic pain. Maybe some of us caring for loved ones who are elderly or sick. And maybe for some, we're struggling with a difficult marriage or even other challenges within our family. For some of us, maybe it's the disappointment of hopes or dreams deferred. Maybe you've been waiting on God and it feels like he's not answering, or maybe he's forgotten about you. Grieving can come in so many different forms, not just physical loss, but even sometimes just life not working out the way that we hoped. And I just want to say thank you again so much, all of you, for sharing just some of the pain and some of the challenging things that you've been going through. So one thing that I do know is that we each have a story, our own unique story, and that story matters. God has been writing your story since the very beginning, since before you were even born. Psalm 139 is one of my all-time favorites, and it tells us that God put a lot of thought into who you were going to be. So I'm just going to invite you to just listen and really reflect and meditate with me on this passage. You can close your eyes if you want, but I'm reading again out of Psalm 139. You formed my innermost being, shaping my delicate inside and my intricate outside, and wove them all together in my mother's womb. How thoroughly you know me, Lord. You even formed every bone in my body. When you created me in the secret place, carefully, skillfully shaping me from nothing to something, you saw who you created me to be before I became me, before I'd ever seen the light of day. The number of days you planned for me were already recorded in your book. I love this psalm because it reminds us of how important and precious each of us is to God. Listen to all the verbs that are used in this passage to describe how God prepared you to be the amazing woman that he designed you to be. It says, he formed you. He shaped you. He wove you together. He thoroughly knows you. He created you. He carefully and skillfully shaped you. He planned for you. Let that sink in for a moment, how much your creator adores you and how he has carefully selected and placed inside of you unique talents, gifts, and abilities so that you can have a powerful impact on this world. God has been with you since the very beginning. Whatever you might be going through, you are not alone. He is walking right beside you through every hill and every valley. I'm so excited that our theme today is This Is My Time. I love that modern spin on for such a time as this. And I'm so excited because we're going to be looking at Esther and taking inspiration from her life and her story. And what we're going to see in her story, as Melanie mentioned in the intro, is that no matter how challenging things may seem, God always has a plan. And if you remember one thing, I hope it's this: where God guides, he provides. I'm going to say that again. Where God guides, he provides. Or en français, au Dieu guide, il fournit. God is at work all throughout our lives. He's guiding us and he's preparing us for what's to come. He is never going to he's never going to lead us somewhere and then just leave us there. He's always going to give us what we need to fulfill his purpose and his plans for our lives. This is our time is a powerful statement that reminds us that God has a unique assignment for each of us. I think something that's so interesting about the book of Esther, just in my study preparing for this time, I've listened to podcasts and, watched lessons and stuff, but it's so interesting to me that God is not mentioned in the book of Esther a single time. There's no angel of the Lord who appears to her. God doesn't speak to Esther in a dream or vision. And yet, if you look closely, you can see how God is interwoven all throughout her story. And his hand is so clearly at work throughout all of the circumstances of Esther's life. And in the same way, he's working in all the details of your life and in my life as well. Oftentimes, God uses the challenges in our lives to refine us and to provide us with opportunities to grow. I'm sure you'll all agree that challenges and trials, they don't always feel good. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I could choose, I would choose the easy, pain-free path. But what's encouraging this morning is that as we look at Esther, we're gonna see that even she experiences her fair share of challenges, and yet God is gonna work through her life to bring her to exactly where she needs to be. So let's look for a minute at some of the challenges that Esther goes through. So one of the things we learn about her is that she's an orphan. And I can't imagine how difficult that would have been for her to not have her own parents to raise her. Then she's also forced to live in a foreign country, which at the time is Persia, which is now modern day Iraq. So instead of being able to grow up in her own homeland, which honestly, some of you might be able to relate to that because maybe you came to Canada in order to flee a situation that was dangerous or unsafe. Esther also had to go through that. And then as a teenager, she's taken to the king's palace, which is not her choice, where she has to go through this rigorous training and preparation in order to win the favor of a pagan king. We see in Esther's story how God works through these challenges to prepare her for what's to come. And I believe he does the very same in our lives through the trials and the tests of faith that we also experience. I love this quote by Renee Swope. Sometimes life takes us to places we never expected to go. And in those places, God writes a story we never thought would be ours. Isn't that so true? God is writing our stories, and sometimes things don't go as planned, but each of our stories is unique, and God wants us to trust him even through the difficult seasons of our lives. So we've looked at how God has guided Esther through some of the challenges in her life. Now let's look at how he provides for her as well. And remember, kind of our theme here is where God guides, he provides. In Esther 2:9, Esther gains the favor of Haggai, who is in charge of the entire harem. Note that it says Esther gains his favor. It is not simply given to her. Esther uses her kindness, honestly, perhaps even her charm, to gain the favor of the most important and influential person in the harem. This benefits her greatly as she's given the very best treatments and even a special diet. And then Haggai, who's in charge of it all, he even gives Esther 7 handpicked maidservants just to wait on her and take care of her needs, as well as the best quarters that are available. The hand of God is so clearly at work all throughout Esther's story. And then in Esther 2:15, it says that God caused Esther to find favor with everyone who saw her. So again, God's just continuing to clear the path for Esther, and she continues to gain favor with everyone. It says everyone around her. And then in Esther 2:17, perhaps most important of all, Esther is able to gain the favor of the king. So through all the training and preparation that Esther's been through for an entire year, she is the one who is chosen out of the hundreds of women who've been brought in all over Persia. She's the one who's able to win the favor of the king. It says in verse 17, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She had won his love and his favor more than all the others. We see that Esther is exactly where she needs to be so that she can fulfill God's purpose for her life. Okay, so that all brings us to our main text this morning. And here's something that's really important for us to know. At this point, the entire Jewish population is facing the threat of genocide. What's clear is that Esther is the only one who can stop this from happening. So let's read in Esther 4:13 and see what Mordecai says to Esther. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And then the famous line, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. In another version, it says, perhaps you were created for such a time as this. It's just like that psalm we read earlier. God created us with a specific purpose and assignment in mind. And so I wonder just what Esther would have been feeling at this crucial moment. A little earlier in verse 4, it says that Esther was overcome with fear. And I think as women, we can all relate to being in a difficult situation where we're really not sure how things are going to turn out. I know for me personally, if I'm honest, I can often go to the worst case scenarios where fear or doubt or worry or anxiety can feel completely paralyzing. And I think we can all relate to the emotions that Esther would have been processing as she was faced with this decision. There's a really powerful quote by Eleanor Roosevelt where she says, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. And in Esther, that's exactly what we see. She does the thing that she thinks she cannot do. Let's read Esther's response to Mordecai in verse 16. She says, "Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Remember, where God guides, he provides. And here we see that God provides Esther with the courage, the tenacity, the bravery, and the boldness that she needs to meet this moment. And Esther responds in humility, calling her people to fast and pray together. She turns to her God, trusting that he will see her through. For me personally, this one particular verse is so inspiring. If I perish, I perish. Esther gets to this amazing place of surrender where she's basically saying to God that she's going to trust him completely, regardless of the outcome. And because of this one important decision, she literally changes the course of history. Once again, the story of Esther reminds us that where God guides, he provides. And in the end, Esther does receive the favor of the king, and he agrees to spare the Jewish people because of her bold request. And something that I think is really cool is that even to this day, the Jewish people continue to mark this deliverance with a celebration that's called Purim, which is a yearly reminder of God's faithfulness through Esther. So as we wind down here, I just want to remind us that, like Esther, we too have talents and resources to shine, to encourage, and give hope to those around us. Perhaps sometimes we can be tempted to think, oh, God can't use me. I'm not like Esther. I can't do what she did. And the truth is, most of us probably won't have like this Joan of Arc type moment where, like Esther, we're called to put our lives on the line to save a nation from destruction. But that doesn't mean that our everyday acts of courage, of compassion, or service are any less important or any less extraordinary. Every time we choose to share God's love with others or to stop to help someone in need, we are saying, this is my time. Every time we make decisions to better ourselves, to go after our dreams, to use the talents and gifts within each one of us, we are saying, this is my time. Whatever stage of life you find yourself in, God has an incredible plan for you. Maybe you're just starting on your spiritual journey, and for you, taking action is deciding that you're going to learn more about who God is and maybe make the decision to get baptized. For those of us who already have a relationship with God, we're called to be a light in this broken world. There is so much brokenness around us, especially with everything we're going through with the pandemic and all the other stuff. And so many are lonely, are hurting, and are in pain. We can decide this is our time by sharing the good news with the women that God has placed in our lives. Maybe you're a teenager or a campus student, bright-eyed, full of promise and dreams that you long to fulfill. Go after those dreams and chase down that future with everything you've got. Remember how God used a teenager like Esther to save an entire nation of people, or how he used the teenager Mary to bring the Messiah into this world. God wants to use you to be the change makers of your generation. Or maybe you're like them in the middle years, like I am, having those aches and pains. Perhaps you're established in your career, or maybe you're busy raising kids and you don't feel like you have a lot to give or that you have as much energy as you used to. You too can own your path and ask God, what are you calling me to do? There are no limits to the ways that God can use your life when you choose to say, this is my time. Maybe you consider yourself to be more seasoned and you wonder if maybe your time has passed. Maybe you wonder if God can still use you. If you're ever tempted to think that your time has passed, I want to encourage you to look to Anna the prophetess in Luke 2. Scholars aren't sure if Luke is saying that Anna was 84 years old or if she had been widowed for 84 years. If that's the case, then that means that Anna in the Gospel of Luke is 105 years old. And here she is serving and prophesying at the temple. Anna is such an inspiring example of a woman of faith whose life seemingly didn't go the way that she planned it. And yet she said, "This is my time." And she never looked back. It reminds me of a sister here in Kansas City named Betsy, who was recently widowed, is, I believe, in her 70s. And during the lockdown, she went around bringing food to those in need, encouraging people in different ways. We can all decide to say, "This is my time." So, whatever stage you're at in life, no matter what hardships you've had to endure, God is not done with you. He has amazing vision for your life. In what area is God calling you to action? Imagine if each of us leave here today making a simple decision to go after God's plans for our lives, to take action, to be a light, and to make a difference in this world. Remember, where God guides, He provides. Au Dieu guide, il fournit. What will you do with the time that you've been given? God has a very special assignment that only you can fulfill. As we celebrate International Women's Day, let's commit to supporting each other, to lifting each other up so that we can each fulfill God's vision for our lives. Amazing things happen when we stand together as women and as sisters. Let's follow the example of Esther and boldly say, "This is my time. This is your time. This is our time." Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Clarissa, I'm so inspired and moved and motivated to really use the time that God has given me. I didn't write this in my notes, but I remember in, Clarissa's early journey, one of the things that she wanted to do was to go into medical school. And, we saw such great potential in her and asked her to forgo that dream and go into the full-time ministry, which, if you're the one asking, that's a scary thing to ask someone to do when they have such high aspirations. But I can honestly say today, after listening to you, everyone on this call agrees with me that you are literally doing what you are meant to do in sharing the gospel with women. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your deep convictions. The clarity of your voice spoke so powerfully. And I don't think I will ever forget the line, "Where God guides, He provides." I love that. It is such a clear picture of a journey and a focus that I can take away from today. Thank you again, Clarissa. I'm just super, super grateful. And if you look at the chat, everyone is just incredibly grateful. I love you so much. This is a great opportunity right now for us to break out into breakout rooms because we have been filled with so much thus far. And so we are going to go into those breakout rooms right after I speak. They're going to be random. And so the whole goal is that you meet new people. You were asked if you received a registration link that to bring a picture, one of your favorite pictures. And so you're going to have an opportunity to share why that's your favorite picture. And then you'll also perhaps have an opportunity to answer one of two questions. And the question is, who are the women of influence in your life and why? Or the other one is, what are you hoping to leave with today? Just a couple things, we have a limited amount of time in the breakout rooms. There should be about 7 or 8 of us. So I really want to just have us be mindful of time as we're sharing to give as many people the opportunity to share. Thank you again, Clarissa. Enjoy your time in the breakout rooms. Please remember that if you do have a question for Clarissa, you can send that directly to Jillian in the chat or just put it in the open chat and we'll get to that question in our question and answer period. Enjoy the breakout room, ladies.
And we are looking forward to hearing from Nancy, all there in the East Coast. Are you back? Are you there, Nancy?
I'm here.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And if you're in Atlantic Canada, like I am, good afternoon. Thank you, Andrea, for doing the door prize, and congratulations, Chinwe. I have the privilege of introducing our next speaker, Brenda Saunders Todd from Dress for Success. This is an incredible organization that we have the opportunity to partner with for our Women's Day event today. Dress for Success has a mission to empower women to achieve economic independence by providing economic support, professional attire, and development tools to help women thrive in work and life. My husband and I first met Brenda back in April 2019, when our Hope Worldwide Canada chapter partnered with Dress for Success here in Halifax and hosted a successful donation drive and event. I look forward to what Brenda has to share with us today, and I'm glad to be able to partner again with this great organization together to support and empower women in our various cities. Following Brenda's portion, we will get to watch an interview hosted by Jillian Briswa as she interviews Angela Wang. It is a powerful demonstration of sharing vulnerably about her time of grief and how it spurred her to a goal that launched an interesting initiative. I'm sure as we watch together, we'll be inspired to make a difference as well. But first, I give you Brenda Saunders Todd.
Good morning, I guess good afternoon from the East Coast. Thank you very much for that introduction, Nancy. I am guessing everybody can hear me okay? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Where God guides, God provides. Wow, what a wonderful theme. And thank you to everyone who has spoken so far. It's absolutely my distinct honor and pleasure to be here from Dress for Success Halifax today. We are, for those of you who don't know, we are an international organization. However, what I wanted to talk about today is some of the ways in which I've experienced the past 12 years of my involvement with Dress for Success and the ways in which we've impacted the lives of women. And I have to say that what I've been listening to so far, it feels that you all are able to resonate with exactly that because you're all doing the very same thing. So I'd just like to share that it has been a privilege for me to make a difference in the lives of these women. But one of the things that I wanted to share, just a couple of the comments that we've heard from the women that we do serve are things like this. The women have said, "You make me feel beautiful." Now, this isn't me, but this would be the volunteers, whoever's working with the women. "You make me feel beautiful." One of the comments that made one of our volunteers actually reduce to tears was when they were told that it was the first time that they were treated like a human being. And we felt, wow, how absolutely awful that is for that individual to have never experienced anything like that until coming to our organization. What I will tell you that we do very successfully as an organization is that we meet the women where they are, not where we want them to be or even where they want to be, but we meet them where they are. And that has made a huge difference in the trust factor that we get as an organization. And so for those of you who do know about Dress for Success, you're probably aware that yes, it's about clothing that we provide, but it's not just the clothing. It really is the way in which we move women forward is through confidence and connection. That's what we do. And so one of the things that we had to do as a result of 2020 with the pandemic is we had to pivot. And in addition to still being able to provide in-person suitings for these women who are getting free clothing to go for their job interviews, is that we're able to provide some virtual offerings. So guidance and direction for a lot of the women, whether they were trying to navigate how to get through CERB, those sorts of things. So these are the things that we've been able to do as an organization. And I want to just grab my absolute favorite verse in the Bible of all time is Romans 8:28. And for those of you who know that, you know that it's that we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And I really feel that that's what we do as an organization. What are some of the ways, if you're sitting there right now thinking, well, how can I think? Typically, most people, when they think about Dress for Success, they automatically think about clothing and they send clothing to the organization. While that's all true, yes, we do require clothing for our clients. We're not a funded organization anywhere across the country. So we have 13 affiliates across Canada. So we really don't receive the financial dollars that are required to run the organization. So for those of you who are wondering, what can I do? One of them would be to reach out to any of your local affiliates and perhaps volunteer at the local level. Another way is by donating financial resources, because we really do require those in order to continue to do what we do. We do fundraising on the ground level at this point.
No.
And
okay, if you're, can you up where it says you're viewing Ottawa Church of Christ screen?
Excuse me, I'm just going to interrupt Brenda. And once again, ladies, if everybody can please mute so that we can have absolute focus on Brenda, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Brenda. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. I stopped because I thought, well, maybe somebody was trying to get my attention. So, you know, again, those are some of the ways that, yes, we do take donations of work clothing. But of course, as you can imagine, especially during 2020, everybody has been pulling from their closets. And so I can speak for all of the affiliates across the country. They literally are bursting at the seams with clothing and looking very forward to being able to give them out to the clients. But they are absolutely overwhelmed with clothing right now. But yes, we still, certainly in Halifax, we're still receiving clothing donations on a weekly basis. So and I believe the rest of the affiliates across the country are doing the same. So I think that was what I was sharing in terms of what you could do to assist the organization. I'd like to share, finally, one thing that came to me during the talks so far. And we know that it was about Esther. And one of the things that I was struck by, and I often work with analogies, and for example, I'll just give you one quick thing before I share with you about Esther. With Dress for Success, the way the organization works, the umbrella is Dress for Success, and under the umbrella are 3 pillars. One is the suiting program, which is the clothing that we provide. One is the Career Center. That's where we provide guidance and support for those who are looking to either transition in what they're doing. Maybe they want to get out of retail and they want to go into nursing, so they need assistance in navigating that. And then the third pillar that we provide services is the Professional Women's Group, and that's to all of the women who are employed, and we continue to give them support. So for me, I find it very easy to explain what it is that we do. I'm going to now slip over to Esther and share with you what came to me personally as I was listening earlier. What Esther means, the letters of the word, ESTHER, and how it applies to us. And I think for everybody on the call, it means, for me, elevate sisters through heavenly empathetic resources. I'm going to say that again. Elevate sisters through heavenly empathetic resources. I am absolutely thrilled to have been on the call with you all today. Thrilled to be here. Looking forward to, if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to reach out, please do. And thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this event. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over.
Hello to all you beautiful women. I hope you're enjoying our time together. And we have the privilege today to have a special guest, Angela Wang, who's going to share about This Is Her Time. So Angela, again, thank you so much. It was great just talking to you a little bit before, but thank you so much for taking the time and just sharing your life. That's cool.
Thank you, Julian. We appreciate this time.
Great. So it'd be great. Please just let us know a bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I was born in my mother's hometown, which is a small town in the southern part of China. And I grew up in the northern part of China, which is my dad's hometown. So you can see my parents travel a lot. Like my parents are hardworking business people. So that left me to be raised by my grandparents since my parents traveled so much. So I came to Canada for post-secondary education when I was 20 years old. And I met my husband in our church when I was 24. So we have a daughter who's 15 now, and my son, our son, who's 11 years old. And well, a little bit more about my career. I worked at one of the five big banks for over 10 years before I became self-employed. So for the past few years, I was a real estate agent plus yoga teaching instructor at like different yoga studios.
Sounds like you're a busy lady, but also you have a lot of different things going on. That's great. That's great. I know that, you know, for both of us, we've lost someone dear in our lives. And for me, my dad passed away about a year and a half ago. And he really was challenged a lot with mental illness for most of his life. And for you, can you please share with us? I know that you've had loved ones who have passed away and challenges with mental illness as well. Can you please share with us what all that situation has really fueled and motivated you to start your initiative? That'd be great.
Oh, thank you for sure. So because I was raised by my grandparents, so we were very close. And so when my grandfather passed away, it was my first time experiencing the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
So my world was just turned totally upside down since the grief was so deep to bear for me. So I found myself weeping for no reason when everyone else is asleep at night. And that lasted for more than 1 year. So I had to go for professional mental health help to cope with my grief. And the Bible says, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find. And that is so true. I'm so grateful for the professional counseling. Without them, I would never know that my deep grief was connected with my relationship with my mom. So because I felt abandoned by my parents, especially my mom, because she's more of the caretaker than my dad. So only when I stopped blaming my mom for my past, I did truly got over with the the grief that I was suffering from. And the other thing motivated me that started the initiative to help others is the pass of my cousin. So after I came to Canada, the only relative I had is my cousin, and he passed away last year, like just the beginning of pandemic.
Wow.
And he was only 39 years old. And the sad thing is nobody else in the family was aware of his mental illness until his death. So it was like an eye-opening for me. So I asked myself, what if my cousin got connected with someone who could help him with his mental stress?
Right.
So that became my calling. That calling started to grow louder inside my head, that there is a need out there to help connect the right therapist to person who need it to help them to live a better life. So that's the original starting of this nonprofit organization where I am heavily involved in right now. We help to bring lots of mental health professionals on board, and which the public can get a discounted rate for to talk to those mental health professionals. And we would organize regular healing connection sessions to learn about how to cope with life and how to help them to overcome some challenges in their life.
So there might be some women who have heard, you know, what you shared, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. I want to do something like that. I want to make a difference. But then there might be other people on the other side thinking, I'd love to do something, but I feel like, who am I? And I don't have what it takes. If you can just maybe share with us, like, what advice would you give them, or what would you tell them that can really help them to feel like, maybe I can do this, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Jillian. You know, I thought I didn't know what to do neither after a few of us started the organization. And we didn't even know how to do website, and starting from the logo and just everything. We didn't have a clue what to do. But once you have a goal in mind, you kind of just fix the eyes on that goal, and you go with it. Like the heart is to make a difference, and make an impact. And I believe everything is possible. And once you put your heart and your mind to make it happen, I believe everyone can be influential, either at your home, at your work, and just be that light to shine wherever you are, the way you wish it to be.
Oh, I got goosebumps actually when you were saying that. Thank you so much, Angela, for taking the time, for just sharing your heart, your life. And it's so cool to see your example, you know, your love, your passion, your, you know, the faith obviously that you have in God, and just really your love for people. You just wanted to make that difference. And you, as you said, your goal was in mind, and you took people with you, and you made it happen. So thank you so much. And I'm sure all these people are very grateful, you know, for the support and the help that they have in this new organization now, because, you know, this was your time. That was, you know, what you did. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Hello, everyone, again. That was amazing. Thank you for that interview. And thank you, Brenda, also for joining us today, and that great acronym that you gave us, and for the great insightful interview from Jillian and Angela. And now I'm very excited to introduce you to our second guest speaker for our event today, Elizabeth Smith McCrossan from Amherst, Nova Scotia, but really, truly from Linden originally, because I know her big sister's on the call, and I wanted to give a shout out to Linden. She is an amazing woman of influence in many areas. She not only has had experience in the healthcare field as a nurse, but also as a small business owner, and currently is also politically involved, as she currently sits as an MLA for Cumberland North. With having 4 grown children, all of which have been living home again recently, 3 dogs, 3 cats, and a husband who is a doctor, let's just say Elizabeth is one busy gal. Despite all this, the one thing you always feel when you speak with Elizabeth is that she's focused on you. She cares deeply, she's authentic, and loves genuinely. Her core values as a woman of faith shine through in all she does. I'm certain she will share some further great insights on the story of Esther, and I'm so glad that we can have Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Can everyone hear me okay? First of all, before I start, I just want to say thank you to Melanie and to her team for putting today's event together. It's just been incredible so far. The music, the everything, the message that what Angela just shared, powerful. So thank you. Technology is, I've got 2 laptops set up plus my iPhone. So if there's any challenges with technology, I'm trying to be prepared. So our message today is about Esther. And I named my message, Living a Life of Impact and a Year at the Spa. So now that I have your attention, full disclosure, I used to actually own a spa. And when I studied Esther and thought about her spending a year at a spa, not a week, not a day, but a year engaging in beauty treatments, I got a little jealous. We don't know exactly what those beauty treatments entailed, but we can make an assumption that they not only aided in catching the attention of the king, but they also prepared Esther mentally, emotionally, and physically, I believe, for what lay ahead and helped her to prepare her to live a life of impact. So I open these comments because when I learned about Esther and her life, I believe that she allowed God to prepare her for the conflict that she was going to face. I believe there were a lot of other factors that also prepared her heart, her body, her mind, and her spirit for a life of impact. And we too must care for ourselves. For when there is such a defining moment for such a time as this, we will be ready. You will be ready. I'm so proud to join with you today virtually to celebrate International Women's Day as we celebrate with women the world over and celebrate our theme, for such a time as this. For such a time as this, the fact that we're living through these extraordinary times in the middle of a global pandemic is enough said. The last pandemic comparable was over 100 years ago. Today, as we study and think about and discuss Queen Esther, who was an orphan, who became Queen of Persia, and who transformed the future of the Jewish people, it's important to recognize that we also are living through extraordinary times. And these times call for the same attributes that we see in Esther. And while studying Esther, I identified 6 areas that I believed helped her to live a life of impact. And those 6 areas are up on the screen there. A willingness to show her, to use her strengths that was given to her by God. A focus on building trusting relationships. She identified conflict and managed it. She had courage, wisdom, and faith. And these are all attributes that you and I are just as capable of when we, like Esther, are outward focused. When we have a heart to serve God and his people, anything is possible. Sometimes when we read and learn about other, quote, amazing women, we can make assumptions, right? I'm sure you all have. I know I have. I make assumptions like they haven't lived through the challenges that I've lived through. We tend to find ways and reasons to separate ourselves from them, assuming that our lives really could never be a life of impact like theirs. Esther was known for her beauty. She was a queen. She had it all, right? Wrong. She didn't have it all. Esther was an orphan, and Clarissa, our first speaker, she talked about that. Keep that in mind. Her uncle raised her. We don't know exactly what happened with her parents, but we do know that they died. And when I think about how she must have felt growing up, I'm sure she experienced loneliness, that same hole in her heart that children have when their parents are gone. Even adults feel that sense of loss after losing a parent. I know that feeling of loss, and you can see a picture there of our beautiful mother, Sharon. I lost my mother when I was 5. She had cancer. She was only 28 years old. And there were 3 of us children, Cheryl, Yvonne, and I. You can see the next slide is a picture of the 3 of us when we were little. And my sister Cheryl is on this Women's Day event today, sharing with us. My mom's death transformed my life. I'm sure, honestly, that I'm a disciple today because of the deep loss that I experienced as a young child, because I yearned for love. And when people hurt me, I drew inward. I grew up on a farm that had dairy cattle, and I spent a lot of time in the haymow, pastures, fields. Would make up songs. I'd pray to God out loud. Would sing to God, and I prayed especially loud when I was faced with angry bulls. There's a picture next of the farm that we grew up in Linden that Nancy referred to. And let's just say there were no spa days on the farm. Growing up, I knew in my heart there was more. I could feel God's presence as a child. I felt a higher love. I felt a higher calling. I felt protected and shielded from the dangers of the world. So I feel a little bit like what Esther might have felt like as an orphan. Although I still had my father, I had lost my mom. But God placed Mordecai in her life to take care of her. And like Esther, God placed many people in my life to take care of me. Like my sister Cheryl, who is a disciple in Los Angeles, California, and is with us here today. Also, Lynn Gallagher, who is a sister living in Dartmouth, who studied the Bible with me. I had many aunts, neighbors like Penny Tomlinson, and my Aunt Lizzie, who took care of me as a young child. But no one replaces the love of a mother. No one except God. So I find the story of Esther incredibly fascinating and incredibly inspiring. And if you haven't studied out Esther yet in detail, I hope today's lesson will inspire you to study her life more deeply. As Nancy mentioned, I'm a mother of 4. My husband, Murray, and I had 4 children within 6.5 years. Honestly, it was a bit of a blur. Here's a picture of my sister, or my daughter, Sharon. And yes, I did name her after my mom. And the next slide is a picture of my husband, Murray, and our 3 sons, Thomas, Matthew, and Joel. There we go. If you have children or grandchildren, I wanted to show you a picture of my family because honestly, my spiritual journey has been with them, right along with my husband and with my 4 children. And, you know, growing up, when the children were growing up, we used to watch a lot of VeggieTales. And I bring that up because the VeggieTales version of Esther is actually, it's an awesome lesson. And it starts out with Queen Vashti, with one of the king's servants telling Queen Vashti that she needs to make a peanut butter sandwich for the king. And Queen Vashti tells the servant the king could make his own sandwich. And Queen Vashti's actually banished from the kingdom. Now, of course, we know that is not what is recorded in the Bible, but that lesson just helps us to see what happens to someone when they disobey the king. And that will help us to understand the impact of later on in the story when we see how the king treats Esther. A few years later, my oldest son, Thomas, was homesick for a whole week from school with influenza. So I stayed home from work with him as well. And that week, I remember reading the story of Esther. And I don't know if you can see it. You might not be able to see it on the screen, but it was a book written by Charles Swindoll. And I remember that week being completely enthralled with the story of this woman, Esther. And then in recent years, I've watched a movie called Esther on the online movie network called PureFlix. So I fell in love with Esther. I fell in love with her courage, with her wisdom, and she inspires me. So let's take a closer look at those 6 attributes that I believed helped Esther to live a life of impact. And remember, there are 6 attributes that I believe you and I can also use in our lives. So Esther was willing to allow her own beauty to shine. Esther was a young woman, and we can assume that she took good care of herself, as the scriptures describe her as, quote, a young lady was beautiful of form and face. After Queen Vashti was deposed, Esther was one of the many young virgins who gathered and was placed into a beauty regime for 12 months. Remember my reference to spending a whole year at the spa. So we can only imagine what those beauty regimes entailed. But whatever they did, we know that King Xerxes was attracted to Esther. More than any other women, she won his favor. So what are your strengths? Do you use them confidently? What do you do to take care of yourself? And what do you do to accentuate your natural beauty inside and out? As Nancy mentioned, I'm a registered nurse now for 30 years, and my passion is healthcare, prevention of disease, early detection, and good management of illness. And there's no question that nurturing your body and spirit and mind must be purposeful. And I recommend that you take time to take care of yourself. So what does this look like for you? Taking into consideration sleep patterns, water intake, nutrition, music, yoga, time with friends, prayer, and time with God. Obviously, our routines have changed dramatically during these times of COVID, but we must make ourselves a priority in our health. A proper balance of these puts us in a good place. And I know when I'm strong and healthy, body, mind, and spirit, I feel like I can handle whatever God places in front of me. The next attribute that I wanted to talk about today is Esther had a focus on building trusting relationships. I believe trust is incredibly important. Esther built a trusting relationship with her husband, the king. And without this trust, she would not have been able to make her life of impact. And keep in mind, trust is built over time. And one example that the scriptures give us is of Esther when her uncle Mordecai uncovered a conspiracy to murder the king. Mordecai told Esther, Esther told the king, and made sure that she gave the credit to her cousin Mordecai, her uncle's son. So building trusting relationships allows you to accomplish more, and I'll share with you a few more examples later on. The next attribute that Esther used was she identified conflict and managed it. So a question for all of you listening is, have you ever experienced conflict? Of course you have. Silly question. How do you manage it? What is your natural management, conflict management style? We all have a natural go-to place. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. There's accommodating, avoidance, compromising, collaborating, competing, or confrontational. My husband and I, although we've been married now almost 30 years, he's an avoider naturally, and I'm a confrontational naturally. So we've had lots of fun, but we've grown and learned together. And that's the beauty, is that we all have the ability to grow. And we all experience conflict. We all manage it. We just don't always manage it effectively. And if it's left unresolved, conflict almost always escalates in one form or another. So let's look at Esther again. In the story of Esther, there's two men. There's Haman and there's Mordecai. Haman was the king's right-hand man, and Mordecai, the Jew, who also worked for the king, was Esther's cousin who raised her. Mordecai worshiped God, and Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman. So to make it simple in today's term, we could say they had a workplace conflict. Haman did not like the fact that Mordecai would not bow to him, and there was a power struggle between those two men. Haman wanted everyone to bow down to him. Let's face it, he was on a bit of a power trip. The dislike grew between these two men, and Haman conspired to get rid of Mordecai. Haman's desire for power continued to grow, to the point that Haman planned not only to kill Mordecai, but to kill all of the Jewish people. Amazing. Haman convinced the king that the Jews had disobeyed the king's laws and therefore must be put to death. And the king, he trusted Haman, but he shouldn't have. So I think I would encourage you all to look at what is the conflict in your life, who are the players, who is involved, and how are you trying to manage it. Near 4 years ago, my life changed. I entered the world of provincial politics. I had big ideas. I had real desire for positive change. And just as you would expect, there were Hamans everywhere, fighting for power at all costs, willing to be deceitful and willing to lie, and lying if it benefits them. But there's also Mordecai's. There's people with pure motivations, fighting for what is right and standing for justice and truth, just like in every other industry and sector and workplace in the world. In the story of Esther, the conflict in part, I believe, happened because the king had the wrong people surrounding him. That's a problem that many leaders make. To be most effective, people in positions of authority, like the king, should have people surrounding them who are aligned with their same vision, their same values and purpose, and people they can trust. And the same can be said for you and I. We must choose wisely who's in our inner circle. That can prevent conflict for you, but when conflict does arrive, because it will, You will have people that you can trust to tell you the truth and people that will protect you. This next slide is just a picture of a couple of years ago when I ran for the leadership race, and that was my trusted inner circle. That's my family. And in politics, you need to have trusted inner circle. When I made a decision to serve in public office, I assumed it would be difficult. I wanted to live a life of impact. I wanted, and I still want, God to use me for his purpose. I wanted, and I still want, to change many things. I want to fix the problems in our healthcare system. I want my area of the province to be rebuilt and to become prosperous. Before getting elected, I studied the book of Nehemiah 3 and 4 times and in great length to prepare my heart and my mind. But change does not come without conflict. Some people don't like it when you try to create change. In politics, when you refuse to be someone's puppet, when you stand for what is right, that means someone else is being convicted that they're wrong. And others don't like it when you put the people who elected you first before their needs. So I've had my share of conflict in the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, I've had my life threatened. I've been taken to human rights with false allegations. I've been called a racist. I've been sued after asking a person just to move a block right away. I've had to hire a lawyer on several occasions. Let's just say, if you try and invoke change, you will face conflict each and every single time. And you need to be prepared to be impactful and to be effective like Esther. You need to be willing to use your strengths. You need to have trusted relationships, know how to manage conflict, and you need to have the courage to take the risks. Esther had that courage. Mordecai, going back to Esther, Mordecai had sent a message to Queen Esther and persuaded her to help him save all of the Jews, including herself. Remember, she was a Jew, from death. It meant that Esther was taking a risk that could cost her her life. What risk are you willing to make when you know someone is out to harm another person? Well, Esther was willing to take the ultimate risk. In the days of Esther, if any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that he be put to death. And you remember what happened to Queen Vashti earlier on. So we know that the king sticks to his word. Mordecai sent a message to Esther through one of the king's eunuchs, quote, to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. The message that Mordecai sends to his cousin is, quote, and who knows that you have come to a royal position for such a time as this. For such a time as this. For who knows that you have come to blank for such a time as this. You can fill in what is your position, royal or unroyal. We all are in positions where we can be women of impact. Esther was also a woman of faith. When she was faced with a life-threatening situation, what did she do? And Clarissa already talked about this, so I won't go into great depth, but what did she do? She asked the Jews to fast for her. She asked them to not to eat or drink for 3 days and 3 nights. And then she also did the same. She led by example. She says, when this is done, I will go to the king, and even though it's against the law, if I perish, I perish. When you face a problem, big or small, do you rely on your own strength? Or do you, like Esther, fast and pray and ask others to help you and do the same? She did not rely on her own human strength. She called upon the higher powers of the Lord. She and all the Jewish people fasted and prayed for 3 days and 3 nights. And back several years ago, I read a book called, I don't know if any of you have it, it's called The Celebration of Discipline. And it's a path to spiritual growth written by Richard Foster. And I just wanted to share that with you because it was a great book where I studied fasting and prayer in more depth as an inward discipline. And it was very helpful for me. I don't know about you, but it takes a lot of discipline for me to fast and to pray continually. I'm naturally a little ADHD. If you talk to my husband, he'll verify that. And I tend to have about 100 things on my mind at any one given time. But I believe completely that Esther sets a wonderful example for us about fasting and prayer. What else can explain not only the king's decision not to kill her, but also the wisdom and the strategy she used? One of my frequent go-to scriptures is Ephesians 6, which reminds us that our battle is not against flesh and blood. It reminds us that our battle is not against one another. It reminds us of the spiritual battle that we are in. When we choose righteousness, when you choose righteousness, when we choose to follow God's plan, we're going to be in a spiritual battle. We're going to be in conflict each and every time. It's a given. You should expect it. You shouldn't be surprised when it happens. You should expect it and you should anticipate it. Lastly, yes, Esther used wisdom. Esther used wisdom and I would say strategy. In today's world, some would call it strategic planning. If you look at what Esther did after 3 days of fasting and prayer, she went to the king. If you read closely, she went to him, she waited for the invitation to speak. She didn't go barging in. She waited for the invitation to speak. She waited for the king to hold out his gold scepter. She was patient. She was controlled. She made sure she was safe before proceeding. She gave the king the ability to still have his power. I think that that's really important when you look at the strategy that she used. She was a wise woman. She allowed the king to still have his power. She was calm and she was respectful of his position. And then what does she do? She invites him to dinner. She invites him to a banquet. All part of her strategy, I believe. They came to the banquet. The king offered her. He was anticipating. He's like, "What, my dear queen, what do you want? What can I do for you?" He offered her up half of the kingdom. Clearly loved her, clearly respected and trusted her. So what does she do next? It's a bit baffling. She invites him to a banquet again the next day. And none of us know why this happened. Was this part of the plan? Or did she get nervous? Or did she get a feeling that the timing wasn't right? We don't know. But I do believe God's Spirit was guiding her. Remember, all of the Jewish people had fasted and prayed for 3 days. Think of the power that comes with that. I believe it's what made the difference. It guided her decision-making. It guided her intuition, guiding her faith and giving her the courage to choose the right words and the right actions in the moment. So now we're going into the second banquet, and Esther says to the king, "O king, if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life. This is my petition." She begs for her life. She exposes Haman's plans to the king, and in his anger, the king orders Haman to be hanged in the very gallows that Haman had built to have Mordecai killed. Amazing. The king gave a decree to Mordecai and Esther, to all the Jews, and the king allowed them to save themselves and also to destroy anyone that was trying to kill them. Esther used great wisdom in her quest to save the Jewish people. Wisdom is found throughout all the scriptures. You all know that. And in this slide, I share one of my favorites. I've studied the book of Ecclesiastes several occasions, and I'm always, sometimes when life is just confusing, I'll just go to this scripture, and it reminds me all I have to do is fear God and keep his commandments and let God take care of the rest. So as a recap, let's look at Esther. She was a young child. She lost both of her parents. She was an orphan raised by her cousin. She won the heart of a king. She earned the trust of a king. And when faced with the death of her own people, faced with the possible death of her own life, she fasted and she prayed and she asked for her people to do the same. Esther had a willingness and a heart to allow her own beauty, whatever that beauty is, inside or out. She had a heart to allow that beauty to shine. She built trusting relationships. She identified conflict and managed it. She had courage to take the risks. She had faith, and then she acted with wisdom. Has God ever placed you in a situation for such a time as this? If he hasn't, He will, if you allow him. Each one of us can learn from this woman, Esther. We could be in her situation where our words, our actions will affect the lives of others. In preparing for today's lesson, I reflected upon my own life where I can identify areas where I need to change and be more like Esther. And one of my weaknesses is I don't always slow down enough to listen and to allow God's Spirit to lead me. Fasting and prayer removes the noise, disciplines the mind, opens the ears of our heart, and allows us to identify conflict clearly, and then rely on His Spirit to fill us with wisdom, to guide us in times of conflict, times like COVID, for such a time as this. I encourage you to take time to nurture your own beauty, your beauty inside and out, body, mind, and spirit, giving yourself permission to go to the spa for a day, even an hour. Find ways to nurture and care for yourself. And may God bless you, and may we all be strengthened by the example that Esther has set for us here today. And let's all strive to live a life of great impact. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing your life and your heart with us today. You are an inspiring example of an Esther from today. It's all the conflict, you mentioned conflict, and you said if you try and invoke change, you will face conflict. And as a vice principal, I feel like that's what I do all day long is take care of conflict and teaching people how to deal with conflict. So thank you for that and the examples you gave in your life. And you gave us so much to reflect on. So I'm sure we all have a lot of questions to reflect on. At this time, we were going to do a question and answer period, but unfortunately, we don't have time for that today. So I'm sure we will have an opportunity at another time to forward some questions to you guys and maybe have them answered. But thank you again so much. It was very inspiring. We are going to do our final door prize now. So I'm going to pull the name from the program. Is everybody ready? I have to use my hands to pull the names. All right, and the third and final door prize winner is Taylor Ripley from Amherst, Nova Scotia. So congratulations, we will be emailing it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea, Elizabeth, everybody. What a morning. Again, for those who are in different time zones, it's morning into afternoon for us, but I feel like my cup runneth over. It is filled. I feel motivated. I feel like I want to just go after this and spend some time with God and just digest all of the messages that have been communicated today through different venues. I just am very grateful. I want to say firstly, thank you so much to everyone on the committee, everyone who volunteered their time, especially for those who have full-time jobs and then volunteered their extra hours outside of that. People with children and families and teens and college students. I think there's just a wide array of different women in different life stages who have helped, and I'm just incredibly grateful for that. I want to give a very special thank you to our guest speakers. You have certainly taken us on an amazing journey through the book of Esther, but even more importantly, through the tapestry of your life. I think that makes the Bible real to each and every one of us. And I thank you for your honesty, your clarity, your vulnerability, and your admonition for us to imitate Esther. There's nothing we can truly do to say thank you, and your crown is in heaven, and it'll be greater than any gift we could ever give you. But I do want to offer just a small token of gift certificates to each of you, which you'll be getting in your inbox. And just want to say, please just take some time to pamper yourself with the small gift that we will give you. I wanted to, for those visiting with us, if this is your first time to our faith community, I want to extend an invitation to you to seek us in a deeper way. And what I mean by that is if you want to know more about us as a faith community, or you want to know more about the Bible, or you just want to learn more about women's ministries in the different countries, I want to encourage you to seek us out online. And one of the ways to do that is to go through the registration page. You can see the different churches that are being sponsored through the registration page or our Facebook page. We will also have an email that follows this event, and it'll have all this necessary information if you want to connect with somebody. And I'm sure even if you have a specific question for Elizabeth and Clarissa, we can find a way for you to get those questions answered. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are here to help you in your spiritual journey in whatever way we can. I want to give a special thank you to Angela Wang, the sister who was on the interview. I know her story even deeper than what she was able to share in the 8 minutes she had, but what an amazing journey of sorrow and pain and grief, and how she allowed God to use her to really provide a service for those who are hurting. And, to be able to connect somebody when they're hurting is such an important thing, because when you're hurting, it's hard enough just to reach out, and it's doubly hard for you to find that right person that's going to be able to help you. And so her organization really connects the bridges for people. And so thank you so much for that, Angela. And again, her website will be in the chat box. It'll also be in the follow-up email. Lastly, and certainly not leastly, want to just say how excited I am to partner with Dress for Success. Every year we do try to partner with an organization, as I said before, that focuses on women's needs. Dress for Success, as you learned today, is such an organization. And so we are running a campaign through the month of March, and you may have seen when you registered a donation button. That donation button, we have partnered with Hope Canada and Dress for Success, and that donation button is for you to be able to donate to Dress for Success. So that information, again, is going to be in the chat box where you can go to donate. It'll also appear in the follow-up email that we will send you. But again, whether it's $10, $15, $25, $50, whatever you can donate to really help this organization serve the women in our community who really need this help, this connection to empowerment, I really want to encourage you to do that. Any donation over $25, $20 and $25 and up, you will receive a tax receipt for that. Lastly, I think I said lastly before, I want to say thank you, a very special thank you to Andrea Morrison, who kind of ran the whole slideshow. Thank you. Please show your love for her in the chat box. I could not have done it without you. Thank you for the social media team, communication team who promoted the event. Again, could not have done it without you. After me, we're going to have a video from different women, different ages, who are closing out in a word of prayer, and that will serve as our conclusion. Thank you again, ladies. Love each of you, appreciate each of you. And I do hope and pray that you will find that journey where God guides, He provides, and that you'll learn through Esther, perhaps through fasting and praying, God's strategy and plan for your life so that you can be the best that you can be for Him. Love you guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Wow, it's been an amazing day, am I right, sisters? As we end, let us end with a word of prayer from different sisters of different ages representing different nations around the world.
Dear God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time that we get to just be here and serve you, God. Thank you so much for Clarissa and Elizabeth for preparing these lessons for us. God, we are so grateful for everything that you do for us and that you will continue to do in our lives. We love you so, so much. In your name we pray. Amen.
Prions ensemble. Père éternel, merci infiniment de cette journée que tu nous accordes, Père, de cette journée des femmes que nous partageons ensemble, Père.
Merci d'inspirer nos sœurs qui vont partager avec nous, que nous puissions être inspirés, Père, et défiés par ta parole, afin d'aller annoncer avec joie et avec force ta bonne nouvelle à ceux qui nous entourent. C'est au nom de ton Fils Jésus que j'ai prié. Amen.
Mwari Baba, tinokutendai nechipo cheupenyu. Tinokutendai Mwari Baba nenguva ino yamatipa kuti tisangane nemi. Tinouya pamberi penyu Mwari tichinamatira madzimai ose ari pano. Tinoisa zvose izvi mumaoko enyu. Amen.
Panginoon, maraming salamat at binigyan mo kami ng pagkakataon na magsama-sama bilang isang pamilya sa espesyal na araw para sa kababaihan. Gabayan mo kami araw-araw at patuloy na tulungan maging magandang ehemplo ng iyong pagmamahal. Iniaalay namin ang araw na ito sa iyo. Naway magbukas ito ng maraming pinto para sa mga uhaw sa iyong pagmamahal. Salamat Panginoon Diyos at lahat ng ito ay aming dasal sa ngalan ni Jesus. Amen.
主耶穌，感謝你今日帶領我嚟呢個聚會，讓我哋認識到神對我哋作為一個女兒、妻子或者母親等唔同角色嘅期盼。祈求我哋能夠把握你賜予嘅關愛同埋才能，令到我哋嘅生命更加能夠發光發熱。
Mi atyánk, ki vagy a mennyekben, szenteltessék meg a te neved. Legyen meg a te akaratod, úgy a mennyben, mint a földön is. Minden napi kenyerünket add meg mi nékünk ma, és bocsásd meg a mi vétkeinket, miképpen mi is megbocsájtunk az ellenünk vétkezőknek. És ne vigy minket kísértésbe, de szabadíts meg a gonosztól, mert tiéd az ország, a hatalom és a dicsőség mind